Hello and welcome to Silver Age Silver Screen, a podcast where we watch, discuss, and review film adaptations of comics, anime, video games, and other stereotypically geeky works. I'm your co-host, Casey Jarms.
And I'm your other co-host, Riley Thorpe.
Now, 2 weeks ago, we talked about how we would make movies about a team of supervillains turned good guys, or team of supervillains in general, for Marvel movies. And now, 30 seconds later for us, but 2 weeks later for you, we're going to be doing the same thing, but with DC.
Right, our discussion ran a little too long, so we decided to break this up into 2 parts.
Do you want to go first again?
Yeah, sure. So if you've just listened to our first part of this episode, you pretty much know what we're going to be talking about. If you're lost, go back, watch our first episode on this, on our ideas for how we would like to see a Marvel film centered around a team of villains would work. Basically, go watch that. That'll get you pretty much caught up to where we're at. But today we're going to be talking about our team of DC villains. So, I decided to make a Suicide Squad team. Now, I kind of challenged myself in the same way that I challenged myself last week, what with making sort of a team that had never been together. I decided to make a Suicide Squad team of members that had never been on the Suicide Squad before. So, the 5 members of the Suicide Squad that I picked for this story have never been on the Suicide Squad in the comics, cartoons, or films. So, the story picks up Amanda Waller, who is the founder of Task Force X. She does not trust the Justice League whatsoever. They are literal gods among men. If they go rogue, humanity will not be able to stop them at all. So, what she needs is essentially an A-bomb to say, look, I have this weapon, I need this, and if you go rogue, I will use this against you and you will be defeated. She learns that in the Fortress of Solitude, Superman is keeping a device called the Phantom Zone Projector, which transports whoever gets shot into an alternate dimension where they are essentially kept prisoner until whoever has the projector decides to let them out. So with a device like that, who will completely get rid of anyone who gets in her way, she will have a fighting chance against the Justice League. Essentially, like I said, an A-bomb. The Suicide Squad will be heisting the Fortress of Solitude. That's the plot of this story. So, the Fortress of Solitude is in the middle of the Arctic, and under threat of potentially going up against Superman. So, you would need a team of villains that are capable of withstanding the elements. You would need characters who would be able to put up a fight against Superman, potentially. And, as per my personal challenge, members of the team who have never been on the Suicide Squad, as far as I know. I mean, maybe things have changed by now. Maybe 1 or 2 of these might have been on the team, and I just don't know about it. But as far as I know, none of these members have been on the team. Now, each member of the Suicide Squad, of this team, serves a specific purpose in the team, which is the point of what the Suicide Squad is. Which, tangent, I know the movie was really rushed, poorly edited, and just overall shitty, but that's one of the many things that the film was severely lacking. For example, the scene where the Marines are going to go plant a bomb underneath wherever Enchantress is, they're going underwater and they're going to plant that bomb. Killer Croc has to convince them to let him tag along. Why? The point of the Suicide Squad is they're supposed to be serving a purpose, doing dangerous things, and who cares if they die? Killer Croc, his purpose in the team is to do that. And yes, he does end up doing it, so he serves the purpose that way, but the team has to be, they're like, no, we got this. We don't need you. Why? He's Killer Croc. Let him do it. He's supposed to die on this mission anyway. Let him do that. That's one of the many things that film lacked that my story will predominantly focus on. The team Amanda Waller builds, a team of supervillains, is 1. Inertia. Inertia is a Flash villain. He is a clone of Barry Allen and Eobard Thawne, the Flash and the Reverse Flash. He's genius-level intellect who created a technology that he uses to not tap into the Speed Force, but slow time around him so that he can travel at a super speed. So we have a speedster who can put up a fight against the Flash, which means he can sort of keep up with Superman, theoretically. 2. Firefly, a fire-themed Batman villain. His purpose is he can fly, he's tech-based, so he can be really stealthy, he can do recon, and he's resistant to the weather. Number 3 is Silver Banshee, a Superman villain who projects sound waves so powerful that even Superman is challenged. They time the heist at a specific point when Superman is not in the Fortress of Solitude. But Superman can travel at the speed of light. He can be there in the blink of an eye. If Superman shows up, Silver Banshee and maybe possibly even Inertia are able to keep him busy while the rest steal the Phantom Zone projector. So you got a Flash villain, a Batman villain, and a Superman villain. Another character who isn't very mainstream nowadays because he's a relatively new villain, a character by the name of Automatopoeia. He's a Green Arrow villain created by Kevin Smith himself. Kevin Smith being the king of all nerds.
Yeah, director of a bunch of films like Chasing Amy, Mallrats, Clerks, Jay and Silent Bob.
Big comic book fan, loves DC, loves Marvel, loves all this stuff. He created this Green Arrow villain, Automatopoeia. His power is that he can replicate sound waves. This confuses and disorientates his villains in a fight. Now, how does this fare against heisting the Fortress of Solitude and going up against Superman? Automatopoeia is a brilliant tactician. He's been able to outsmart Batman and even the Joker. He is genius. So he's the brains of the operation. He's the tactical mind, and he's a brilliant martial artist, physically at the peak of his game. You have essentially Batman on your team, an evil version of Batman on your team. Automatopoeia is as smart as Batman, around as smart as Batman. Batman is way smarter than Superman, so you have a character who's gonna lose in a fight, a one-on-one fight automatically, but he can outsmart Superman. So, you have Inertia, Firefly, Silver Banshee, and Automatopoeia. Now, there's one last member who's going to be acting as a very crucial part of it. Amanda Waller needs this character. In my opinion, this villain is the most underrated DC villain of all time. Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze, or Dr. Victor Freeze, is a man who is a scientist whose wife was diagnosed with incurable disease. In an accident, his body was mutated into being unable to survive outside of sub-zero temperatures, and he has spent his entire life committing crimes in order to fund his research and technology, trying to find a cure to his wife. The reason why I love him so much is because most of Batman's villains are crazy, mentally ill lunatics. But Mr. Freeze is not insane at all. He's a lonely, grief-stricken man who just wants to do right by the woman he loves. And he has turned himself into a monster to try and do that. And despite that, he still keeps fighting because he wants his wife to live. He can survive sub-zero temperatures. He's brilliantly intelligent. For nothing else, Automatopoeia might not survive the weather. Silver Banshee, Firefly, and Inertia, they might not make it past Superman. Sure. But Mr. Freeze is Waller's ace in the hole. She has the most confidence in him, but he's never been on the team before, and when she approaches him, he refuses. But she desperately needs him because he can hack into the systems. He's strong enough and powerful enough to withstand the defenses, and he can survive the trip. But he refuses to do so because he has no interest in that. He's plotting his escape and getting back to his life of crime in order to save his wife, Nora. Well, she offers him the cure to Nora's disease. She says, we have the cure, and we're going to give it to her, but only if you, Victor Freeze, help us with this operation. She convinces him, and he goes along with it. Waller takes a freight ship as far as they can go north, closest to the Fortress of Solitude, and from there, Victor Freeze, Automatopoeia, Silver Banshee, Firefly, and Inertia walk to the Fortress of Solitude and make the journey among the sub-zero temperatures. The entire story is focused around Victor Freeze. He's having this big existential crisis of, okay, my journey is coming to an end. This is what I've told myself I wanted the entire time. Have I lost myself along the way? I've become this terrible person. I'm not even human anymore, essentially. I can't survive outside sub-zero temperatures without my suit. I've hurt people, I've committed crimes, I've gone to jail, I've done all these terrible things that I'm regretting, all in the name of saving my wife. But now that's coming to an end. Was it all worth it? And he's struggling with this big existential crisis this entire time of, I've become a terrible person, but I'm not a terrible person, but I'm a criminal, and there's a reason why I'm on the Suicide Squad, is because I am a criminal, and I'm a terrible person, and I've been driven to this because of this one sole goal. This one goal I've had, and now that goal's over, what's the purpose of my life? Am I just going to be sitting in jail for the rest of my life? And so he's struggling with this entire existential crisis, and I had this idea for a beautiful scene. They've been walking this entire time. The Suicide Squad members have been having conversations with each other, and Victor Fries is having this crisis within him the day before they go to the Fortress of Solitude. And again, this whole journey hasn't been too long. It's maybe been like a day or so, but they've set up camp for the night, and they have to be careful and stealthy because Superman might hear them and travel them, so that's why they can't be there immediately. That's why Firefly can't be there immediately. He's been doing some recon, but at a distance, to not set off the alarms and alert Superman. It's nighttime, they set up tents or a cave, they find a cave or whatever they're gonna do, and Victor Fries can't sleep because he's still struggling with this crisis within him. Well, he looks out of the cave and he sees Aurora Borealis, and he just gets up, walks out of the cave, and as he's walking, he realizes, I'm in sub-zero temperature. So he takes off his suit, and essentially he's just walking around naked in the middle of the Arctic, watching the Northern Lights. This man who hasn't been able to walk outside without a suit for years, maybe even a decade, he's able to walk outside and see with his own eyes the true beauty that this world has to offer. As he's watching this beauty with his own eyes, a tear rolls down his face, a warm tear, and it burns his cheek as it goes down until it freezes from the air. And he decides, this is what's right. I need to do this. The next day, the Suicide Squad reaches the Fortress of Solitude, hack into the systems. They start searching for the Phantom Zone projector. The alarm goes off, and Superman jets back to Earth. They find this Phantom Zone projector just as Superman arrives back to the Fortress of Solitude. So while Silver Banshee is keeping him busy, the rest of the Suicide Squad members are smuggling the Phantom Zone projector out of the Fortress of Solitude. They give it to Inertia, and they say, look, you're the fastest. You can give this to Waller immediately. The rest of us might not make it, but you, Inertia, can go. And Inertia takes the Phantom Zone projector and starts running in the opposite direction of Waller. And Waller gets over the intercom and says, what the hell are you doing? We had a deal, you're going to bring this to me. And Inertia says, no way. I'm going to use this to defeat my archenemy, the Flash. I know you implanted a bomb in my neck, but I can just phase through it and it won't affect me because I'm a speedster. I can just do whatever I want. You're not going to be able to stop me. And just like that, Amanda Waller blows up Inertia's head, saying, yeah, we thought you'd betray us. We know you're a speedster. There's a reason why we picked you for the team. We implanted a bomb in your neck that you couldn't phase through. So, Inertia's dead. Waller tells Firefly to go pick up the Phantom Zone projector and bring it back to her, which he does. He goes, flies down, picks up the projector, and at rocket speeds flies back to the ship where Amanda Waller is. Just before Firefly can make it back to the ship, Superman defeats Silver Banshee, pins her to the wall, and says, who sent you? Why are you here? And just before Silver Banshee can tell Superman what exactly is going on, Waller blows up her head. So Silver Banshee is dead. And with Superman covered in blood, wipes the blood from his eyes, and he immediately knows. Waller. He knows Amanda Waller and the Suicide Squad are behind this. So he rockets to the boat because he sees where Firefly is taking it. He hands it to her. Superman crashes down through the ship and confronts Waller. But Waller holds the Phantom Zone projector at him and says, make a move, I fucking dare you. Waller has her A-bomb, and she's keeping Superman at bay. So Superman says, fine, and he flies away. Waller has won this day. The rest of the Suicide Squad, meaning Mr. Freeze and Automatopoeia, make it back to the ship eventually, and when they reach there, they take him back to wherever they were. They take him back to the jail that they were both at, and Waller tells Mr. Freeze that they have administered the cure to Nora's disease to her, and she's going to be okay. But from here on out, Mr. Freeze is still a member of the Suicide Squad. He has to keep fighting. He has to keep going on missions like this. But Freeze refuses. He says, no, my journey is over. My sole purpose was to save my wife's life. And I've done that. I turned myself into a monster, a terrible human being, in order to save her. And that's what I've done. I am not going to be a part of your Suicide Squad anymore. I don't care if you kill me. My life is complete. What his journey has taught him is, yes, he's a terrible person, but he's become so in order to save someone else. Not just that, the woman he loves. So Waller kills him because he refuses to help her with the rest of the missions. And Freeze dies after this whole struggle, internal struggle, this big existential crisis. Victor Freeze dies a happy, fulfilled man. He's completed his purpose and saved Nora. With Victor Freeze's body lying on the ground, Waller walks away, and her assistant goes, do we really have the cure? And the story leaves off, did she? Did she have the cure? And if she did she administer it to Nora? I don't know. So essentially, the story is an entire existential crisis with Mr. Freeze learning the error of his ways and realizing that what his journey was all about and why he is still a good person at heart.
Holy crap, that was good. Damn. Few things. You captured Amanda Waller being just a horrible, horrible person, which she is. When you said that she has been for years hiding a cure to a deadly disease and not giving it to people, I didn't question that for a moment. Because of course she would. Because she's the worst.
Right, exactly.
But, of course, she would also lie to Victor Freeze and get him to kill himself over that. Because, again, she's the worst.
And again, I wanted it to be more of an ambiguous ending. Because it's like, did she have the cure? And if she did she give it to Nora? We don't know. But Victor died happy.
Yeah. I will note that what made this work was you're focusing heavily on Victor Freeze. Victor Freeze is a very interesting, very complex Batman villain, and there have been a lot of really, really good stories written about him. But maybe there has been one, but I can't recall. I don't think I've ever seen one about, okay, you became a monster and justify the means to save your wife. Now what? What do you do when your wife is cured? What does that leave you? And that's a really interesting concept for a film.
Yeah, it's very powerful, this idea of a Batman villain, an iconic Batman villain, who is at the end of his journey looking back at all of it like, okay, what now? Was it all worth it? Going down in history as a terrible human being a foe for Batman to just punch in the face, was that all worth it? And at the end, what with the whole Aurora Borealis scene, he learns, yes, I started this in order to save my wife, and that's what I did, and that is the end of my journey, and I am happy and content with that. I am ready to die a fulfilled man this way.
Yeah, I really like that. And can we be real a second?
Mm-hmm.
The Suicide Squad movie that came out in, what was that, 2016?
Yep.
The one that came out in 2016, it was a shitty, shitty film. It was bad.
Yeah.
And the thing is, a lot of it can be placed on the writing, and there's the excuse of that, well, he only had 6 weeks to write it, and I sympathize with that. It's hard to write a feature film in 6 weeks. But also, you came up with that stuff in a week and a half, and I came up with my stuff in a week and a half, and
yeah.
Obviously, coming up with a pitch and coming up with a whole script are completely different in scope.
Right.
But, I mean, it is depressing that basic ideas of how a story works aren't known by people who will be trusted with billions of dollars to make a film.
Right.
How about have a character with a good arc is something that didn't cross anyone's mind when they worked on that film, and that's sad.
Right.
It's sad.
It really is. Even the director, David Ayer, who I don't blame for Suicide Squad, because what happened with that film essentially is the studio screwed him out of his film. David Ayer wrote and directed a very dark, serious, psychological thriller. But then the studio was too concerned that the current direction of the DCEU at the time was too dark, while at the same time Deadpool came out and people were like, oh, that was such a big smash success. So they outsourced the editing of the trailers to a company that's specifically designed to do that, edit movie trailers. Basically, they were going to market this film as a lighthearted comedy adventure film. That's why the last few trailers are really fucking solid. Like a company that was paid millions of dollars to do a great job at that did. So what the studio did was, okay, you did a great job on the trailers. How about you edit the entire film? Which is something you and your editors have never done at all before. So essentially you have a bunch of inexperienced editors in terms of film and cinema turning a drama into a comedy, and it's just so jarring and so poorly done, and I don't even blame David Ayer for it, though he even admits, he says, yeah, it was a terrible idea to make Enchantress the villain. It should have been the Joker, but I don't blame David Ayer entirely, despite the fact that he's really only made 2 good films, but the rest are okay to terrible.
Even if it's the fault of the executives, the point still stands that it is depressing that people who throw away billions of dollars don't know what to do with it.
Right, exactly.
And make bad things.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my DC Suicide Squad film, centered around Mr. Freeze and a heist of the Fortress of Solitude. Like I said, I believe I said last episode, I'm like, my DC idea was a bit stronger than my Marvel idea, but...
That was strong. It was really good. You know, it's interesting. We didn't discuss these at all between episodes, besides saying, like, I think my Marvel one's coming around good. Oh, that's cool. I'm still working on my DC one, and I think it's going to be pretty good. Anyway, it's interesting that despite not talking, our teams have no double-ups.
Really?
Like, you want to know that because you know my pitch, but we have no shared characters in either film.
Yeah. In Marvel and DC?
Yeah, I don't have any of what you chose, although...
That's cool.
You chose some pretty cool characters. It's also interesting, and I had to, like, suppress a laugh when you said this, that your Suicide Squad movie's a heist movie. Because, you know what I thought was the really creative idea for my DC villain movie?
What?
It's a heist movie.
Hey, great minds think alike. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. What is your DC villain-centric film pitch idea?
Well, first off, I'm gonna tell you the title, and it isn't Suicide Squad or The Suicide Squad or Suicide-Squad. It isn't about Suicide Squad, Legion of Doom. It's kind of about Injustice Society, picks a few ideas of them. But basically, this film is going to be dealing with my favorite DC Comics supervillain team.
Okay.
This film is called Captain Cold and the Rogues.
Nice.
I just chose my favorite villains. And one of my favorite DC supervillains is the Flash villain, Captain Cold, and his crew, which are the Rogues.
Love that guy.
Which, the thing about the Rogues that makes them so interesting is that they're an organized group of supervillains who have a very strict moral code. They don't kill people. They definitely don't kill superheroes. All they do is steal. They don't try and take over the world, both because they're moral and because it's practical. Like, say you kill the Flash's wife. Now Flash is gonna break all your bones. Which is why you stick to just stealing stuff.
Exactly.
And this isn't a direct adaptation of the Rogues. I want to do characters from other parts of the DC universe, so it isn't the traditional lineup. It, as I said, combines some stuff from Injustice Society and some villains who weren't part of either team. But we open with a narration from Leonard Snart, aka Captain Cold, explaining that he isn't a supervillain. Supervillains are crazy people who blow up cities and try to take over the world. He is not a supervillain, he is a thief. He is a rogue. And we see Snart and his team of villains, Heatwave, Golden Glider, Captain Boomerang, etc. The actual members in the opening scene don't matter too much, robbing a bank, only to be stopped by the Flash and taken away to prison. We then cut to Scottish assassin Evan McCulloch looking down the barrel of a gun, about to shoot a politician. He hesitates when he sees the politician's wife and kids. Then a gloved hand taps him on the shoulder and asks him, "What you doing?" McCulloch turns around right in time to get decked by Booster Gold. He, too, gets sent to prison. Snart is sent to Iron Heights, a prison for supervillains. He ends up getting Charlie Brown as a cellmate. You know, that famous DC Comics character, Charlie Brown? Not Peanuts Charlie Brown, of course. Charlie Brown as in Kite Man! Hell yeah! That loser! We also get a quick flashback of how Kite Man got arrested. He flew out of a bank carrying some, bags of money, and then he face planted right into Blue Beetle's airship by mistake and fell into the back of a police car without Blue Beetle noticing. Because Kite Man's a loser, and that's the whole joke. Anyway, Snart blows off Kite Man and learns that all of his team have been sent to different prisons. He ends up meeting with McCulloch, the assassin, and the two become friends. One day, a guard pulls Snart aside and hands him his cold gun. The guard introduces himself as Lawrence Kroc, aka Sportsmaster. And Sportsmaster is a DC villain that I really like, especially after seeing him in the show Young Justice. I don't know if you've seen that, Riley.
I have not.
Basically, they take Sportsmaster, who was a C-list, jokey Batman villain, who's like, oh, I'm a supervillain obsessed with sports, and made him into this intimidating, dangerous supervillain. Because, a guy being obsessed with sports would probably be a tough villain. Instead of guns, he stabs people with javelins and shoots them with bones. They also, in Young Justice, had him be the father of one of the main characters, Artemis Kroc, aka Artemis, because names are a thing. Anyway, Sportsmaster explains that he's a mercenary and has been hired to break Captain Cold and another inmate out of Iron Heights for a job. And obligatory joke about Wentworth Miller's career, yada yada yada. Snart agrees to come with Sportsmaster, but demands that they bring McCulloch, his friend, with them. Sportsmaster begrudgingly obliges, and the two grab Evan. They also grab Kite Man because why not? He was there. The group heads down into the metahuman wing of the prison, where they come across a cryogenic cell housing Basil Carlo. They open the cell and Carlo melts into mud, rushing out of the cell and reshaping into Clayface. Sportsmaster breaks the gang out of prison and takes them to his employer, William Talkman, aka Clock King. Also, something I found out while researching these villains for this pitch is that in the comics, Clock King and Sportsmaster live together. They, don't work together, but they live together, which is a weird thing.
Huh, that is weird, because they are pretty much polar opposites.
Clock King explains that he needs Captain Cold and Clayface to help with a heist, and that Kite Man and McCulloch can also be useful. Cold requests that Clock King breaks the other rogues out of prison. Clock King agrees to, but only if Cold helps with the heist. The gang prepares for the heist. During this prep time, Cold takes McCulloch to the rogues' hideout. Along the way, he explains that he doesn't kill because killing makes superheroes try harder to catch you. Better have a friendly Flash stopping him than a Flash who wants him dead, yada yada yada. Cold also explains that all of the rogues' technology was created by a scientist friend of his named Sam Scooter, aka Mirror Master, who died in a shootout with the police after killing a bank teller. Cold explains that Scooter had a son with a Scottish woman named Eva McCulloch, who he abandoned as a child. McCulloch, with Cold's blessing, takes up his father's mantle and becomes the second Mirror Master. Captain Cold shows McCulloch his father's gaudy orange and green costume, and McCulloch says it looks dumb, but wears it anyway. But he, covers it up with a trench coat. And, a lot of this film's emotional core is between these two men with Captain Cold, who's sort of an older supervillain, training and mentoring this younger guy, the new Mirror Master. And I did some messing around with Mirror Master's backstories to get this. McCulloch in the comics isn't Mirror Master's son. He's just a guy who, after Mirror Master's death, took over his mantle. Although they do have a few times in the comics with the sons of rogues taking over their father's positions. I'm pretty sure Captain Boomerang had that thing, so it's still kind of comic accurate. But anyway, that's the main thrust of this film, is Captain Cold teaching McCulloch to not be an assassin, not to be a supervillain, but to be a rogue and what that means. The heist begins, with Clock King and co. traveling to Vegas to rob a casino. Yes, I like the film Ocean's 11.
Who doesn't? It's a great movie.
Yeah, it is. Had Batman in it. They are going to rob a massive casino owned by the crime lord Warren White. And this casino, how I'm imagining it would look, is sort of similar to the Shard, like that one skyscraper in London, that's triangular with all the windows.
Yeah.
Clock King explains that his sister was put in a coma by White in a hit and run, and that White used his fortune to escape justice, and that he's going after White in the heist both to pay for his sister's medical bills and to get revenge. Cold initially balks at the idea of doing a job for revenge, but is swayed when Clock King tells him how much he's gonna steal. $120 million split 6 ways. Sportsmaster, Mirror Master, Clayface, and Captain Cold go through with the heist. Early in the heist, Clock King has Mirror Master plant a large device in the casino floor that knocks out the hotel security system. Mirror Master's ability to enter mirrors, Clayface's strength and mimicry skills, Sportsmaster's combat abilities, and Captain Cold's intelligence and leadership cause the heist to go off without a hitch. Almost without a hitch.
Oh boy.
Halfway through the heist, Blue Beetle's airship lands in front of the casino. He and Booster Gold walk out, there for a vacation. Cold's squad ends up in a fight with the two heroes, ultimately winning. Also, Clayface eats Skeets, Booster Gold's little robot sidekick. After knocking out the heroes, Sportsmaster tries to kill them. Cold points his gun at him and orders him to stand down, pointing out that killing 2 members of the Justice League is not a good idea if they want to get away with the heist and not be pursued afterwards. Instead, the gang seals Booster Gold and the Blue Beetle away in a mirror. To open the bank vault, the gang needs to get a passcode from Warren White, the casino boss. Cold ends up shooting him with his cold gun, turning his skin white and freezing off his lips and nose. That's a nod to the comics. Quick aside, Warren White, he's a guy in the comics. He's a minor Batman villain who got out of going to jail for a crime by getting declared insane. And he got sent to Arkham. And it was hell. And he ended up getting chucked in Mr. Freeze's cell and freezing his face off. And he became a supervillain. Anyway, ultimately, the gang steals the money and makes it to the roof. A kite-shaped plane, piloted by Clock King and Kiteman, flies down to pick up the gang, and Sportsmaster loads the plane with the cash. Clayface and Sportsmaster, wanting a bigger cut of the money, knock Clock King and Kiteman out and kick Cold and McCulloch out of the plane. Cold fires at them, so Clayface jumps out of the plane and fights the duo on the roof. Cold ends up defeating Clayface, freezing and shattering him. Mirror Master and Captain Cold steal Blue Beetle's airship and fly after the kite plane. They board the plane, take out Sportsmaster, and fly away with Clock King. Also, Kiteman tries to do another betrayal and gets his ass kicked and gets chucked out of the plane. He's like comic relief.
Yeah.
The plane lands in the desert and the 3 remaining crooks split the money. Skeets, freed from Clayface, flies to them and explains that they've just doomed hundreds of thousands of people. Turns out, when Booster Gold stopped McCulloch's assassination, he ended up altering the timeline in such a way that Las Vegas was destroyed by a nuke. The blast centered on Warren White's casino. Booster Gold and Blue Beetle, under cover of being on vacation, went to the casino to stop the nuke, and then were taken out by Captain Cold and his crew. Clock King explains that the device Mirror Master planted in the casino was actually a bomb, and that he wanted to destroy the casino to kill White, destroy his casino, and permanently tie White's name to the death of thousands of people. Cold knocks Clock King out and starts the plane up again. Mirror Master points out that they could just run away with the money, but Cold says that no, they can't, because they aren't supervillains, they're rogues, and rogues don't blow up cities. The Rogues and Skeets return to the casino. Skeets flies off to free Booster Gold and Blue Beetle. Mirror Master starts evacuating people, and Cold tries to stop the nuke. Captain Cold realizes he can't disarm it, and he begins icing it with his cold gun, delaying the reaction and buying the others time. Mirror Master throws off his coat, revealing the orange and green suit, and focuses his powers on the casino. The casino covered in mirror-like windows. Mirror Master pulls the entire city of Las Vegas into a mirror dimension, saving the people from the nuke. Meanwhile, Cold runs out of time. The nuke goes off and everything turns white. His eyes adjust, and he realizes that he's inside one of Booster Gold's force field bubbles. Gold says that Cold isn't that bad of a guy and recommends that Cold explores becoming a hero. We then cut to Clock King walking through the desert carrying the money. Blue Beetle's airship lands in front of him and Clock King surrenders. The Justice League, including the Flash, appear in the desert where Las Vegas once stood. Absolutely furious. Before they can be called up, the buildings reappear, returned from the Mirror Universe by Mirror Master. Booster Gold gives a big, distracting speech about what happened, and Mirror Master uses this as an opportunity to grab Cold and teleport away. The film ends with Cold and Mirror Master plotting a series of prison breaks, aiming to free the other rogues. And that is my pitch for Captain Cold and the Rogues.
That was damn good, my guy. That was really good. Alright, I love Captain Cold. I love the Rogues. Again, I like that. But I also like that you introduced a bunch of new members that aren't typically on the team, like Sportsmaster, Clock King. So essentially, you kind of made a I wouldn't say a Suicide Squad team, minus like what essentially makes a Suicide Squad. But I love the relationship between a young Mirror Master and Captain Cold, and how essentially Cold is put in the position of being the hero towards the end, and teaching him what it means to be a rogue, like you said. I really like that. I really appreciated that. One thing that I love, again, like I said last episode, I love taking no one gives a shit characters and making them these really big, important. Clock King, who has been a joke ever since he was being created, wanting to nuke Las Vegas, that's fucking badass. It is in character for him, setting off a time bomb.
Yeah. And, Clock King's backstory in the comics, that is what it is. He wants revenge because someone hurt his family.
Yeah.
But being driven to do horrible, horrible evil because of that.
Right. When you said rogues, I was obviously expecting the Flash to be the villain, but I love how Booster Gold and Blue Beetle just showed up and became essentially the foils for the rogues in the story.
So here's the thing about the rogues. The rogues are kind of misplaced with their hero. Because they're a bunch of dudes with cool guns, and Flash is kind of basically a god.
Yeah.
Who very easily takes them out. So I didn't want Flash to be the villain because Flash would instantly fix all the problems in the heist.
Right.
But if we put in Blue Beetle, who's kind of a weaker hero, he's basically a Batman knockoff, and Booster Gold, who's very powerful, but also kind of a dumbass, It gives the team an opportunity to thrive. Also, I just like those two and want them to be in a film.
So do I.
And they're enemies of Clock King, so...
Right. What I love most about it is the reason why they're just coincidentally in the story. That excuse, they just show up to Las Vegas on vacation and then find themselves caught up in this heist. That's so Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. Like, that's so true to their characters and who they are. It was great. I like that a lot. And I appreciated that you did the Rogues as opposed to, like, the Suicide Squad. And again, like you said, it is really interesting how you and I had no overlap whatsoever on any team members.
Yeah, I chose I cheesed it with Sentry, but I chose Marvel characters who had already appeared, and then just, what are my favorite DC villains? And honestly, that's why I went with the McCulloch version of Mirror Master, because I like him more. He's like a cool dude in Animal Man.
Yeah, so these have been our pitches for a DC villain-centric films. Check out part 1 of this episode from 2 weeks ago, which was a Marvel-centric villain team movie.
Mm-hmm. You know, this was actually kind of fun. I wouldn't mind, coming up with story pitches for another episode sometime down the line.
Yeah, I agree. This was a really interesting thing that I had a lot of fun with, and I came up with some pretty solid ideas. But, and here's the only downside, too, that I find, because I've listened to some other, comic book podcasts and stuff like that, where they pitch story ideas, and it's like, the story ideas they come up with, like the stories we came up with here, they're so good, but the worst part of it is that Marvel and DC are never going to do something like this, especially not in a movie. It's frustrating, because we came up with some damn good ideas.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place to stop.
Yeah.
Riley, where can they find you?
You can all find me at TikTok and Instagram at Riley James Thorpe. And you can find me on YouTube at Riley Thorpe.
You can find me on Twitter at JarmesCasey, JarmesCasey. Also check out The First Mag Train Out of Cleveland and Other Short Stories, available now on Amazon. It's a collection of sci-fi short stories I wrote. We'll be back next week, assuming we don't get distracted by the Aurora Borealis. Next episode, we'll be seeing if we'll believe a man can fly, because we're going old school and doing Superman the movie from 1978. As always, I'm Casey Jarms.
And I'm Riley Thorpe.
And hey, It's just a movie. Don't lose your head about it. Especially not to a ladder.